If you want to play some of the best tennis of your life, the very first thing you need to do is warm up properly. And I'm not talking about one of those static stretching things where you're holding something like this. That's not what you want to do. You want to have a dynamic warm up. And what that means is you're stretching and moving at the same time. This is the proper way to warm up your body. If you're doing static stuff, you're going to probably hurt yourself, which lowers the chance of you playing great tennis. The very first thing you want to do to have a dynamic warm-up is do some jogging like Megan's doing. She's warming up her heart, she's warming up her body, which will allow her to stretch even deeper as we do more dynamic stretches and allow her to play the very best tennis that she can play. The second stretch we're going to do is knee hugs. Knee hugs is a powerful stretch because what you're going to do is take a step out, pull your knee in. This is going to warm up your hams and your glutes. Now, while you do this, you're going to stretch a little bit on your ankle by pushing up. You can see Megan as she takes each step. She's stepping out, pulling the knee in, stretching it, pushing up on the ankle, and continually doing this as she steps forward. Now, again, this is dynamic. She's not sitting there doing one stretch and holding it. She's dynamically moving through it, which is causing her body to warm up and stretch even deeper, causing her to play even better tennis. Now, how do we relate this to tennis? This is great for when you're on the court, warming up your legs, which are the biggest muscles of your body for playing tennis. So if you warm those up, you're gonna move better, which means you're gonna play better. The second dynamic stretch is what we call cradles. These are important for your glutes, your hammies, and opening up your hips. If you want to move fast on the court, you have to learn how to open up your hips. And this is one of the first exercises, dynamic stretches, that you can do to do this. Simply, what we're going to do is bring our back of our foot up to our hip area and open it up. You may have a different range of motion. Do what you can do, but it's really important that we put one up and then we go to the other as we're walking. You can see how when Megan's doing this, she's doing a great job of pulling her leg up and finding a great range of motion for herself, all while opening up her hips to find that flexibility. The more flexibility you can gain in the hips, the faster and more dynamic you're gonna be on the court. Do you want to have more explosive movement on the court? Well, this next dynamic move is what you need to focus on, which are lunges. Lunges are so important for having that dynamic explosiveness in your forehand, backhand, and even your volleys. Now, one crucial, important point when you're doing lunges is making sure that your knee doesn't go past your toe. So as you go out and take that step, you want to make sure that your knee is even with your front foot. Now, as you can see Megan doing this, she's not pushing her knee past that point. As she takes that step forward, she's gonna drop her back leg. Now, again, this depends on your range of motion, how deeply you drop. The more range you wanna find, drop that back leg even deeper and you're gonna find a deeper stretch. Now again, this is for explosiveness on the court. If you wanna hit bigger ground strokes, this is the key dynamic move you need to do.
Another great stretch to incorporate is the hip openers. Now, how you're going to do this is you're going to lift your outside leg up to around 90 degrees. You're going to rotate it out to the side and then come down on the ball of your foot, spin to the other side, and then repeat with the other leg. And then you just alternate as you go through. This stretch is really important for tennis players because so many times we get locked down with our hips and we don't have very much flexibility, which makes us not be able to move on the tennis court, which is huge. So it also is really going to be important to really open up those hips and increase your flexibility there so that you can work on changing direction and be much more efficient when your movement on the court. The next lower body movement that you really want to work on is your quads. And a good stretch to do this is called butt kicks. Your goal is to take really small steps. You're not looking to travel very much distance between each step that you're taking, but actually having your feet or your heels come up to your hands that are placed on your butt. And the goal is really to work on that flexibility in your quads. We use the quads so much in tennis by staying low and dynamic movement that it's not only going to get your heart racing, but it's going to lengthen out those quads and help increase your flexibility there as well. Since there's so many injuries with hamstrings because we just don't use them, which also causes a lot of back strain, it's really important to incorporate this lower body stretch called Frankenstein's. And how you want to make sure you do this is lifting your leg. It doesn't matter how high you lift it, you just want to make sure that you're getting that hip flexibility as well as the glute stretch and the hamstring stretch and lifting it up as high as you can without strain all the way to your hand. Now, if you can't lift it up all the way, that's totally fine. You can keep it down here, but as long as you're really stretching out those hamstrings. Lengthening that will help reduce and a lot of prevention of the injuries of the back, the butt, and the hamstrings, as well as the quads. Tennis is not just up and back movement, it is very much lateral. So it's really important to start right from the stretching point that you can work on this shuffle position. When you're within a 2-step or so radius in tennis, you're going to take a couple shuffle steps to be able to load and hit the ball, or a couple shuffle steps back to recover. You wouldn't necessarily always cross over. So like Ian is doing, he's in about a half squat position, and he's really working the legs in the sense that he's not letting his feet come together. He's actually keeping them separate as he's shuffling. And that's very, very important. You don't want to have your feet clanking against each other. So it really helps you to work on this dynamic movement as well as get your heart going and get your cardio going before you step on the court.
The final lower body movement that we're going to do actually combines a little bit of upper body as well. So it's a great way to get your entire body coordinated and moving together. And it's called the CARIOCA step. It's another lateral movement like the shuffle step, except now what you'll see from Kevin is his trailing foot is alternating between going in front of his lead foot and behind his lead foot. So in other words, as Kevin is moving to his right, his left foot is going first in front and crossing over, and then behind and crossing over. So what this does is it gets the hips moving. It's great for your feet and your ankles to start moving laterally and get them warmed up. And you'll see that as he twists back and forth, he's creating a nice stretch in his core and his abs, and his shoulders are moving back and forth as well. So really his entire body is swinging back and forth. We're getting some good timing and rhythm elements here, and it's a great way to transition towards upper body. The first upper body focused movement that we're going to do in our dynamic warm-up is focused on the shoulders, and these are just simple shoulder circles. Kevin's going to start off going forwards at a pretty small diameter, and as he continues to move, he's going to gradually increase the size of his circles. This is a great way to warm up your rotator cuff, your shoulders, and a little bit of your back and your chest as well as you get your arms moving. This is super critical, not only for your ground strokes, which everybody thinks of as like using a lot of shoulder strength, but especially your serve. And in particular, if you've had issues with your rotator cuff and your shoulder before on your serve. About halfway through, Kevin will switch. Go ahead and do some reverse ones. Kevin starting off small and then gradually getting a little bit bigger. It's important that you work your way into full range of motion and don't just start going full speed and full size right away, because that might lead to tweaking something in that really, really delicate rotator cuff area. The next part of the upper body Kevin's going to focus on is his wrist and his forearm, two critical parts of the body for tennis, and it's important that you get them moving properly. Kevin's extending his arm, and what he's doing is pulling back the hand that he's focusing on just for 1 second gently, and then releasing again. You don't want to crank your hand or your wrist back, and you don't need or want to really hold it super long, just a half a second or a second, and then let it go again. And as he's pulling back, that's stretching the bottom part of his wrist and the bottom of his forearm, which is where we get golfer's elbow from forehands and serves typically. And then halfway through, he's going to switch it and flex his wrist down and then release. And now he's stretching and getting moving the top part of his wrist and the top part of his forearm, where players get tennis elbow, typically from backhands. Work through these and it'll help you get started much more effectively. The final upper body movement that we're going to do is critical for all of you that have had some kind of shoulder pain or rotator cuff issues, especially on the serve. And what Kevin has here is a pretty light band. This is not about getting as much resistance as possible and building up your muscles. Instead, it's just about moving through this range of motion with light weight and a lot of repetition. So he's starting off with his left arm coming in towards his body and his elbows staying close to his side. And then what he would do is, after about 30 seconds or so, switch to his right arm, and now he's going to actually rotate away from his body. What you want to do is make sure you do both directions of movement on both sides of the body. Make sure you come in for 30 seconds on your right side and out for 30 seconds on your right side, and the same thing on your left side. Of course, you mostly want to focus on your dominant arm because this is huge for the serve, but make sure you get both side so that you're nice and balanced out and you don't have to worry about your rotator cuff on your non-dominant side.